Haboim, welcome everyone. We're about to begin Be'ezras Hashem to get on Daf Yud Amud Beis at the very top, Halacha Beis, the new Mishnah. The Mishnah continues to speak about what we buy with the contributions of the Trumas Halishka. Says the Mishnah, Para, referring to the Para Aduma, the Seir HaMishtaleach on Yom Kippurim. There are two Seirim that we make a Garal. The Kohen Gadol makes the Garal. One goes Chatas La Hashem as a carbon. The other one is a korban as Seir HaMishtaleach. That's what it's referring to over here. Veloshon Shel Zahiris. Here we're talking about the red dyed wool that goes into the fire of burning the Para Aduma. All of these things, Boy Mitrumas Halishka, is using the actual Machzis HaShekel to purchase these, since these are karbonos. Kevesh Para, the kevish, the ramp that is built for somebody who's taking out the Para Aduma, namely the Kohen Gadol, in order to then avoid any tuma. The kevesh Seir Mishtaleach, the kevish, the ramp that is used to then go out from the Azara to the outside of Yushalayim, to then take out the Seir Mishtaleach. There, the people were getting antsy, and they would say, quickly, quickly go, and they would bother the one who's taking out the Seir HaMishtaleach, and therefore they would build a ramp to avoid all of that problem. V'loshoin shebein karnov. Here we're talking about the red dyed wool that goes between the horns of the Seir HaMishtaleach. V'amas hamayim, the water that runs through the Azara. The Gemara in Maseches Psochim speaks about when the Korban Pesach on Yudal ben Nisan was brought, and there was so much dam in the Azara, they would use the water from the Amas HaMayim to wash away all of that dam. Here we're talking about, since Yushalayim, it's the walls of Yushalayim that one has to eat koche kalim within those walls, and kol tzarchei ha'ir, all the needs of the city. Boy mishai halishka, the Mishnah is the funds of the shari halishka that was used after the truma, what is left over from that truma, those coins, that itself, that shari halishka, will be then used to buy all of these things, since they're not directly related to the karbonos tzibur. Abba Shaul Oimer, Rabbi Abba Shaul takes issue with the fact that the kevish of the par is used from the shiarei halishka, and he says no, kevish para kaihanim gedolim oisim mishal atzman. The kaihanim gedolim, when they would then have a paraduma, they would then give with their own funds. So therefore, was not coming from the shari halishka. Says the Mishnah Vayter Moisar shari halishka. What's with the leftover the shari halishka after then purchasing all of these things that we just mentioned? Mahoyoisim bahen. Ask the Mishnah, what do you do with them? Answers the Mishnah, loichim bahen yeinois shmonim v'slotois v'aschar lehekti. Rabbi Shmuel says you buy wine, flour, and oil at a cheap price, and when hektesh buys at a cheap price, then they go ahead and sell it for a higher price to those who need to bring menachos and such. On that, Rabbi Kiva takes issue and says, Rabbi Kiva, oimer ein mistakrim b'shel hektesh. We don't do business with the money of hektesh. Ein aniyus b'macham ashirus. And therefore it's not matim, it's not appropriate to then try to seek profit from the money of hektesh. Af lo mishel anim. And also when it comes to then having money for anim, we don't want to go ahead and do business with that money, because maybe there will be a need for anim that will arise immediately, and we won't have that money available. The Mishnah continues, what about after the entire year is up, and it's no longer then the new coin, so it becomes now an old coin, because we need only the new coin to buy the karbonos of the new year. So after now hits Rosh Chodesh Nisan, what do we do with whatever is left over with that Machzis HaShekel? Answers the Gemara, the Mishnah, Rakiyei Zoha v'tzipui lebeis Kodshei HaKadoshim. We use the leftover Machzis HaShekel, and we use it to then make golden plated for the walls of the Kodesh Kadoshim. Rabbi Yishmael Oimer, Rabbi Shmuel says, Moisa HaPeiros Keit HaMizbeach. The Moisa HaPeiros, which also refers to the additional Peiros over here, refers to the oil and the wine. All of those things that are extra, we will then give it towards the Keit HaMizbeach. In other words, Rabbi Shmuel said we do business with them, but didn't explain before what they are going to be used for. What are we going to buy that extra money with? On that, he explains now that the Moisa HaPeiros is for the Keit HaMizbeach. Keit HaMizbeach, we explained before, is when the Mizbeach, the outer Mizbeach, is not being used. That means all of the karbonos have been brought, and it's at a lull before the carbon tamishal bein ha'arboim is brought. We don't want that the mizbeach be bottled, so we have what's called keitz hamizbeach. Literally, it's the dessert of the mizbeach, which is using the community funds to bring karbonos oila on that mizbeach. So that's what Moisa HaPeiros is used for. So Rabbi Shmuel, Moisa Truma leklei shores. He says the additional truma, he's choylek on what we said in the Tana Kama. The Tana Kama said it's used for rikuye zov tzipoi lebeis kodesh kadoshim. He says no, it's for the klei shores. Rabbi Akiva Oimer. Rabbi Akiva says Moisa Truma lekeit hamizbech. Since the Moisa of the truma was going to be the truma, those machzis shekel were going to be used for korbanos tzibur, which is completely burnt on the mizbeach, then it's appropriate to then use it for other things that are going to be burnt completely on the mizbeach, namely those oilos that we mentioned before, the keta mizbeach. Moisa nesachim, the klei sharis. Whereas the moisa nesachim, the additional nesachim that we have, he says that is appropriate to be put for the klei sharis, since the klei sharis is what then it gives it kedusha once it's placed inside of the kelim. So therefore, it's matim, it's appropriate to then use that for the klei shores. That's the shita of Rabbi Akiva. And we have an additional shita, says the Mishnah, Rabbi Chananya Segana Kohanim Oimer, Moisa Nesachim Keitz HaMizbeach. He says, just like Rabbi Yishmael, that goes to Keitz HaMizbeach, and Moisa Truma the klei shores. And that, he says, goes to the klei shores. Just as we saw in the shita of Rabbi Yishmael. So again, when he says, no, he says that Rabbi Chanan Sgan HaKohanim says, Moisa Nesachim goes Keit HaMizbeach. That is a new opinion. But Moisa Truma goes like Rabbi Yishmael, that goes like Klei Sharis. On the Mishnah concludes, V'zeh lo hayu moedin peiros. Both Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Chanina Sagan HaKohanim, they argue on Rabbi Yishmael and say that we don't use the Moisa HaPeiros for doing business. Unlike Rabbi Yishmael, who said we do sell it at a higher price than we bought it, and ultimately we will use it, he says, for the Keit HaMizbeach. Okay. Says the Mishnah, says the Gemara now, Kevesh, Para, Vechule. The Mishnah stated that the Kevesh of the Para, and it goes on to say, also then the Lashon Shel Zahuris, which is burned together with the Para Aduma, that's the red dyed wool. Now the Mishnah, the Gemara brings a statement that there are different types of wool that are dyed red, two that are mentioned in the Mishnah, namely for the Para Aduma, as well as for the Shir HaMishdaleach, but there's a third one for the one who's becoming tar from as a mitzara. And now the Gemara brings that there are different weights for each one. Says the Gemara, Kevesh, Para, V'chule. Rabbi Shmuel, Bar Nachmi, B'Shem Rabbi Yonason, Gimel, L'Shoynos, and there are three different tongues, literally, strips of wool dyed red, what we call Zahuris, Lashon Shel Zahuris, Shel Seir B'Sela. For the Seir HaMishdaleach, it has a weight of a Sela. Shel Mitzara B'Shekel. For the Mitzara who's becoming purified, that the dam has to be mixed together with this, as well as with a piece of cedar wood and a hyssop. That is a shekel. That's the weight of the lashon. Shel para b'shtei sloim. Whereas for the paraduma, that has to be burnt, it has to go into the fire, that has to be a weight of shtei sloim. Rabbi Chunya divras chavrin, he argues and he says, Rabbi Bo Bar Zavda b'shem Rabbi Shimon ben Chalafto shel poro b'shtei sloim umechzo, that the loshen shel poro is 2.5 sloim, not just 2 sloim. The east the mafkin lishna ba'asor zuz. There are those who just say it in a different way, but it also means 2.5 sloim. They say 10 zuz because each sella is 4 zuz, so it comes out to be 2.5 sloim is 10 zuz. The Gemara now speaks about other things that are used for the money of the shiarei halishka. Says the Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda b'shem Rabbi Shmuel, Talmidei Chachamim hamalamdin es hakayhanim hilchos shchita, hilchos kabbalah, hilchos zrika, all the different halachos in regards to doing the avodah. Noitlin scharon, here it says mitrumas halishka, and we're going to see that this loshen is lavdavka, but rather it means for the shiarei halishka. Again, because trumas halishka is used for the direct karbonos hatzibur, and this is for just a way of teaching the kohen to then do the avodah. Therefore, it's from the shiarei halishka. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Verdifa b'shem Rabbi Imi mevakre mumei kodshim noitlin schar mitrumas halishka. Those who check that the animals do not have a mum, they also get their schar, and again, it's lavdafka. It's from the shiarei halishka. Rabbi Acha Rabbi Tanchum bar Chia b'shem Rabbi Shimloi minei magiei sefer hazora, or Sifrei Hazorah noitlin schara mitrumas halishka. There's the Sifrei Torah that are held in the Azara. That Sefer Torah, the one who is careful to make sure that it is accurate, then they also get their schar from the shiarei halishka. Gadil bar minyamin b'shem Rabbi Asi shnei dayonei gezelos noitlin schar mitrumas halishka. The 2 dayanim, here it says of the gzelos, but it means referring to those money matters that are knossos, that are adjudicated by these dayanim. These dayanim get schar again from the shari halishka. Shmuel Omar noshim ha'orgois beparoiches noitnin schar mitrumas halishka. Those women who weave the paroiches, which is between the heichal, the kodesh, and the kodesh kadoshim, that is also, those women get their schar from, again, the shari halishka. Rabbi Chuna Omar mitrumas bedek habayis. He argues and he says these women get their schar from the truma of the bedek habayis. My plik, what is the machlok in Shmuel says they get the schar from the shari halishka, and the shita of Rabbi Chuna who says it comes from the bedek habayis, which is the upkeep of the Beis HaMikdash. Says the Gemara, Shmuel of a lucky garment. Shmuel, he says, since the karbonos, let's say, for example, on Yom Kippurim, the dam is of the Sir HaMishtalech, as well as the dam of the Para. Maybe the Chatos also, they are sprinkled on the Paroiches. And therefore the Avoida then deems it necessary that the funds are used from the Shari Halishka. Rav Huna Ovad Lucky Binyan. He says no, it's doimeh to the binyan. Since the paroiches is be'etzem a 1 amma, there's 2 paroiches, 2 curtains that lead from the kodesh to the kodesh kadoshim. Those curtains, therefore, are like a part of the binyan. Therefore, bedek habayis is appropriate to be used for the weaving of those paroiches. The Gemara continues and says the following statement: Omar Rab Chizkiya Tana Rabbi Yehuda Gadgus Haketores v'kol karbonos hatzibur boy mitrumas halishka. This time it's davka. Again, karbonos tzibur. That's davka, what is used from the actual machzis hashekel. So therefore, that certainly is going to then be for the ketores, which is also a form of a korban tzibur, and all the other korbanos tzibur are used from these trumas halishka directly. Mizbeach hazov v'kol klei shores boy mimoisar nisachim. The Mizbeach Hazov, which is considered to be a Kli, the Kol Klei Shores, they come from the Moisar HaNesachim, which is really the shita of Rabbi Akiva that we saw above. Mizbeach ha'oila, the outer mizbeach, v'ha'heichel v'ha'azoros. Now we're going to use the gears of the Gra. He says, Boin mi bedak habayis. They come from the bedak habayis. The chutz lazaros, those city walls, boy mishari halishka, they come from the sari halishka. Ask the Gemara, v'hotani avnei hamizbeach. We'll go again with the gears of the Gra. V'hotani avnei Yushalayim moyalim bohen. V'zevadai chutz la'azaros. And this is outside the azaros. So how can you tell me, says the Gemara, that this is coming from the lishka of the Shari Halishka? Hare, we have a statement over here that they're moyalim bohen, and these are certainly outside of the walls of Yushalayim, the city walls. And ask the Gemara, "V'chiyesh me'ila b'shirayim? Is there such a thing as me'ila b'shirayim?" And therefore, kasha on how Rav Yehuda Gad Gadus, right, made that statement. It doesn't seem to be accurate. Again, the kasha is that he's saying that the city, those that are chutz la'azars, those city walls, he's saying those come from the Shari Halishka, according to the gears of the Gra. And the Gemara says, but we have a statement that the Avnei Yushalayim, which is certainly outside of the Azaros, outside the city walls, those are Moyalim Bohen. How could it be Moyalim Bohen if they're coming from the Sharia Lishka? Is there Me'ila B'Shirayim? Asks the Gemara. Answers the Gemara, Elaka Rabbi Meir. This is the sheet of Rabbi Meir. The Rabbi Meir Omar Moyalin B'Shirayim. Rabbi Meir says there is Me'ila B'Shirayim. Ask the Gemara, Rav Chia, Klum Rabbi Meir Ela b'toishnosa. When did Rabbi Meir say that there is going to be mi'ilab with the shirayim? That's going to be toich hashana. However, v'hacha chut lishnoso anukaimin. Here we're talking about the stones of the walls that are being used certainly from the old shkalim, and therefore that even Rabbi Meir certainly will not agree that you can go ahead, that there's going to be a chiyuv me'ila on that. So the Gemara leaves that as a kasha on Rabbi Yehuda Gad Gadus. The Gemara brings another statement in his name. Omer Rabbi Chizkiah Tana Rabbi Yehuda Gad Gadus Hashulchan v'hamenoira v'hamizbechois v'haparoiches ma'akvin sakarbonos. Rabbi Meir says that the different items that are mentioned here, the shulchan and the menorah, the mizbechois, the paroiches, if they're not in their right place, or they're missing altogether, then they're ma'akev the karbonos. That's what Meir says. V'chachom oimrim ein lecha ma'akev es hakarbon elo hakiyur v'hakan bilvad. The chacham argue and says the only items that will ma'akev the karbonos are those items, the kan and the kior, which is between the heichal and between the azar and the heichal, and those items, if they're not in their present place where they should be, the designated place, or they're missing part of them are chaser or whatever, then the karbonos will not be valid. They're ma'akev the karbonos. So that's the statement that he made in the name of Rabbi Meir and the Chachamim. The Gemara now brings different Amoraim that show that can't be an accurate statement. V'lo kain, Omar Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yosi bar Chanina. Trehon Omrin, they both said, Kol hein d'chsiv noichach ma'akev. They both said that when it says in the Torah noichach, that's opposite in the pasuk, like it does by the menorah, that's ma'akev. That means if the menorah is not present, or it's in a different place, or it's chaser, then it will be ma'akev the karbonos. Sela ain't ma'akev, but it says sela in the pasuk, which refers to the shulchan, the side, then it's not going to be ma'akev. That's their shita. He adds even the tzela will be ma'akev, and therefore not only the menorah but even the shulchan, if it's not in its proper place, will be ma'akev. V'Rabbi Lo b'shem Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachman on top of Yud Aleph Amid Aleph. A third Amora, a third opinion of the Amorim says Afilu Sima Ma'akev. Even when it says Sima in the Torah, you shall place it. That's Ma'akev. That's referring to most of the Kalim. So here we have a kasha because that's certainly not like any of the opinions. None of them is like the opinion of the Chachamim that he had brought. Rav Chanina explains it's not a kasha. Why? Because kan ba'avodas shebipnim, kan ba'avodas shebechutz. That which was stated over here in regards to the words of the Chachamim, that's talking about avodas shebechutz. So therefore, only the kan and the kior will be ma'akev. Whereas that which the Amoraim said their statements, they're talking about the avodas hapnim, and therefore those things that they're mentioning, those will be ma'akev the korbanos.